Hello and welcome to B News International, and this is Headline News, coming to you from Dakar, Senegal, West Africa. The Ministry of Health and Social Action today reported 71 new cases of COVID-19 identified in the past 24 hours. The ministry has indicated in its daily bulletin on the evolution of the pandemic in Senegal that these new cases came from the results of some 1,600 tests carried out, thus a positivity rate of 4.32%. Regarding the vaccination campaign, the ministry reported that some 469,000 people have been vaccinated so far since February. President Joe Biden is heading to the United Kingdom and Europe on his first trip abroad, sending a signal that his administration values close transatlantic relationships as it deals with challenges like emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and threats from China and Russia.
On Monday, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg visited the White House, where he said President Joe Biden will be welcomed in Europe with open arms.
No other major power has so many friends and allies as the United States has in NATO. So I look forward to welcoming President Biden to Brussels.
The White House says Biden wants to work closely with America's Democratic allies in the United Kingdom and Europe to face challenges such as threats and unfair competition from Russia and China.
At the US-EU summit, the President and European Union leaders will focus on aligning our approaches to trade and technology so that democracies, and not anyone else, not China or other autocracies, are writing the rules for trade and technology for the 21st century.
But foreign policy expert Brian Katulis says that regarding China, America's interests may not align with those of its European allies.
Countries looking at the rise of China and its growth in the economy, looking at its technology and what it has to offer, and looking for ways to maintain ties with the United States, but also build ties with China. So countries like Germany, I think, will continue to hedge in a certain extent, not see eye to eye entirely with the United States.
Katulis says Biden will seek to highlight the common values that the United States and Europe share and that Russia and China do not.
This is his first trip as U.S. president. And I think going to the other center of sort of global democracies, Europe, is an important feature of this. And the multilateral meetings are important. But then some of the key bilateral meetings to watch, I think, would be the ones with UK Prime Minister, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, as well as the Turkish leader Erdogan.
Biden's first talks will be with British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, host of the G7 summit. Then he heads to Brussels for EU and NATO summits, leading up to talks next week in Geneva with Russian President Vladimir Putin. He has promised to pressure both China and Russia on human rights abuses. Mark Simakovsky is with the Atlantic Council.
So Biden and the administration want to showcase that America is back and that we can build back together to counter some of the most significant challenges that we face globally, like climate change, like COVID response, like dealing with great power competition with Russia and China. So this administration, I think, knows it needs allies.
Simakovsky and other experts say the U.S. is now entering a new phase on COVID-19, where it is turning its attention to helping the rest of the world come out of the deadly pandemic by sharing life-saving vaccines. Cindy Sain, VOA News.
Facebook's recent decision to ban former President Donald Trump for 2 years sends a message to world leaders that Facebook is stepping up its role as sheriff on its service. Tina Trin reports.
They may allow me back.
With Donald Trump suspended from Facebook for 2 years, experts say the social media company is sending a message to world leaders and public figures that Facebook will no longer give them preferential treatment when their speech breaks its rules.
What it means for other world leaders is they're not going to be treated differently solely based on their status as world leaders.
Along with Trump's suspension, Facebook rolled out a new policy saying it'll crack down on any world leaders' postings that could lead to harm or violations of its community standards. Previously, Facebook would leave content from public figures up, arguing that there was a public interest, even when that content violated its policies. Some critics say that the guidelines are still too vague and a 2-year suspension of Trump too light, and sends a message that the door to Facebook is always open, even for serious offenders.
The fact that they're leaving this as a suspension means that the other world leaders are on pause too, a little bit, right? That means that maybe, just maybe, they may have an opportunity to continue.
Facebook says public figures who eventually return will face increased penalties for repeat offenses, ranging from 1 month to 2 years. Only cases deemed extreme will result in permanent suspension.
It doesn't matter who you are. You can be the Pope, the Queen of England, the President of the United States. You cannot use our services, and I hope most people would think this is reasonable, to aid, abet, foment, or praise acts of violence.
While the company has set up an independent oversight board to review its content moderation decisions, some experts contend that the oversight board itself is a deflection.
My sense is that they're using that as a way to deflect from more serious issues around, what their algorithms are doing to spread certain kinds of information.
If the internet has come a long way in the last 25 years, shouldn't internet regulations too?
Over the past year, Facebook executives have called for government to play a larger role in determining the rules of the internet.
American democracy does not belong to Silicon Valley. It belongs to the American people. And the people who should set the rules for how American democracy plays out and where the line should be drawn on what speech is and is not acceptable shouldn't be private companies.
While Facebook will look more critically at world leaders' speech, what's certain is that the scrutiny of Facebook itself won't let up anytime soon. Tina Trin, VOA News, New York.
That's it for headline news, but stay tuned on B News International. More to come. Good night.